Standing at 14,115 feet above sea level, Pikes Peak is a constant looming figure over the city of Colorado Springs, Colorado. At around 12,000 feet, the trees give way to an alpine tundra environment, delicate yet extremely resilient to wild fluctuations in temperature, air pressure, and moisture. At this altitude, most plants and animals are unable to survive. Those that have adapted to this harsh environment, however, show the signs of their struggle. The appeal to visit such a unique place is obvious, but the question becomes, how do you get there? The 19-mile road to the summit is the most commonly traveled path, providing easy access to the very summit of the mountain, which hosts a restaurant, viewing platform, and a gift shop. This film is about a different breed of visitors to this infamous peak. Every year, thousands of runners from as many as 19 different countries travel to Pikes Peak in order to compete in two of America's most challenging mountain races, the Pikes Peak Ascent and the Pikes Peak Marathon. The runners will forego the use of the road in favor of a network of trails and rocky slopes. Some people have a hard time simply surviving in the thin air and cold temperatures.
My name is Steve, my wife Joanne.
Hello.
We're from New Mexico, so we come from an altitude of 3,000 feet up here to 14,000 and some changes. Yeah. Got settled not too bad, but at first we were a little winded and we drove nonetheless. And so yeah, it's the thin air.
Each year, runners flock to Manitou Springs to test their physical limits against one of the tallest peaks in America. For runners arriving at the starting zone of the race, they are greeted with an awesome view looking up at the summit of the peak they now have to attempt to run. The feeling around the starting line on the first day is one of tension and anticipation. Among the most seasoned competitors is Matt Carpenter, a gifted local runner who has won the ascent or marathon races over 10 times.
My name is Matt Carpenter. I'm here from beautiful Manitou Springs. This is where I live. This is where I train. It's a great place.
My name is Mike Doherty, and I just moved to Colorado from Brooklyn, New York.
My name is Angie. I'm from Colorado Springs.
My name is Roberto Hernandez. I'm from Fort Worth, Texas. Prepare for running in altitude? I don't think you can. No, the closest thing you can do is run in the heat and try and simulate just the difficulty of running in this altitude. But
well, as you go up, every 1,000 feet you go up, your body's ability to deliver oxygen to the muscles is reduced by about 3%. So for every 1,000 feet, you lose 3%. By the time you get up to the top, it feels like somebody has turned the air off. It's hard to breathe, it's hard to think, and concentration becomes hard. The rocks get bigger, the steps get bigger, and it's just a great culmination of all these different challenges that make it such a unique event.
The Pikes Peak Marathon also holds several other notable distinctions. In 1959, it is credited with having the first female marathoner to successfully finish all 26 miles. Arlene Piper continues to be an inspiration for a local group called the Peak Busters.
My name is Arlene Piper Stein. Stein is my name now, but Piper was my name all the years I lived here in Colorado. The day of the race, there was only 17 of us. There was another lady, my daughter, myself, and the rest were men. And back in those days, there weren't any fancy running shoes or fancy clothes or nothing. We just women wore short shorts and tops, and we bought our tennis shoes at the dime store, and we drank water out of the streams as we were going by, and that was how we did it. We had no stations or anything. As we started the race, and I was first, my daughter was second, and my husband was behind us, keeping us going. And he said, Arlene says, as you're running by the men, say, isn't this a beautiful day for a race? And so that's what I did, and I always remember that. Because a lot of men came here to run the race and didn't realize that the altitude was so bad, and they were just panting, they couldn't even run. I didn't know anything about the impact I had on the whole United States until last year.
I am Dr. Robert Hamilton, President of Emergicare Medical Clinics, Colorado Springs and Pueblo. The most common injury overall is probably dehydration, and that all depends on the weather up here. There's the abrasions and lacerations from the falls, but those are fairly minor on the ascent day. They're extremely common on the marathon day because most of the injuries occur going downhill. Those are the main ones. The next thing we see are the cramps. We see severe cramping at the end of the race.
My name is Nancy Hobbs, and the event we have today is the Pikes Peak Ascent. It's the 55th running of the race, and this year is really interesting because it's the 7th annual WMRA World Long Distance Challenge, and that brings a cadre of people to America, foreigners. We have over 16 countries represented. When you stand on the start line and you look up to the summit and you go, wow, I've got a long way to go. I've got 7,800 vertical feet to climb. It's a long way, in 13 miles. So the average grade on the course is about 11%. So that means there's some really steep sections and there's some not so steep sections. And interestingly enough, there are some flats and some downhills on the way up. This course doesn't require a lot of grade changes as far as going from a really fast pace to a slow pace. Your changes aren't so dramatic in a race like this. It's more of a grind. It's a steady, steady climb.
This year, the Pikes Peak Ascent was awarded the World Mountain Running Association's Long Distance Challenge. As such, elite athletes from around the globe traveled thousands of miles to compete in this grueling uphill battle. This is the day they've been waiting for. This is the day that they will put their training and their will to compete to the test. On the first day, racers compete in the Pikes Peak Ascent. The race covers a daunting 13 miles and 7,815 feet of vertical gain, finishing on the summit. For most, the race is less about winning and more about simply saying that they did it, that they conquered a challenge so daunting that most runners never even try. The course starts out on a gentle incline, meandering through the dense pine forest surrounding the mountain. As the race progresses, the physical demands of the course don't let up. Even as the air gets thinner, the course gets steeper and steeper, magnifying the exertion required to run over 13 miles at these extreme altitudes. Some runners never get near the top of the course, but for those who do, they are greeted with the final tests known as the Cirque, the 16 golden stairs, and then a final 8 switchbacks that bring the runners to the summit and the finish of the ascent.
You all right? Yeah.
Even in the best of conditions, competitors still have to face the overwhelming task of climbing 2,000 vertical feet in the last 3 miles, making the final push to the finish line simply punishing. The best of the best begin to arrive just 2 hours after they started the race, 13 miles away and over 8,000 feet higher. Glenn Randall won this year's ascent with the blazing time of just 2 hours, 9.5 minutes.
It is Zach Thomas from Baghdad, Arizona, number 42. Zach Rosenberg, number 4.
This year, the women's division was decided by a mere 13 seconds. Brandy Earholtz outpaced Kim Dobson by just 1 second per mile, with Anna Frost coming in less than 1 minute later to claim third.
I just did the ascent, and this is my second time I did it. I didn't make my goal, but I knew I'd finish, so I finished. I just died like the last half mile. The last half mile was killer. I exploded.
I cramped, I fell, but it was all right. It's a beautiful race, it's great.
My expectation was to at least do as good as I did last year in the marathon. I came up in 4 hours and then came down a little bit faster, and I was a little bit over 4 hours, and it was just the ascent, so I was a little disappointed. If I commit to doing this race for next year, I definitely learned my lesson on training. I did a lot of hill repeats for last year, and I could tell that it helped. I'm a little bit more sore this year than I was last year.
I won't be here, but maybe the year after that I will. So skip 1 year and then I'll be back. Hopefully beat my first year's time.
I definitely plan to be back next year to do the marathon. I want to do the double-double next year.
What is the double-double?
That's what I've just made up as the name for doing the ascent on Saturday and the marathon on Sunday. From here on, it'll be known as the double-double.
Later that evening, the athletes are shuttled back to the starting area by bus, where they unwind, re-energize, and honor those who came out in the top spots. Runners can check out their times, grab a bite to eat, and talk about the race with their friends before celebrating the winners of each event.
Get up there for the photos, girls. Yeah, Brandy won in 2008. I kind of think she likes this race. Get those photos, ladies.
The awards conclude, leaving just one event remaining, the Pikes Peak Marathon.
The marathon is really a different animal. And you'll notice a difference in the demeanor of the athletes from Saturday to Sunday. You know, there's real high energy for some reason on Saturday, really excitement in both the waves, because there's 2 waves that go on Saturday. Sunday, it's everybody together, and it's, I can't say it's somber, but it's a little more serious. They're out there, you know, a lot longer. So they have to be prepared for, again, your temperature changes. You start out at the start and, you know, it's probably gonna be 60 degrees. It might be 40 at the top, and it might be 85 or 90 tomorrow.
They're both unique challenges, but to run all the way up there and then have to turn around and go back through those rocks and encounter the heat that you encounter on the way down, it just, everything adds up and you start frying your quads. There's a reason it's called America's Ultimate Challenge.
On Sunday, the mood lightened as competitors prepared for the Pikes Peak Marathon. Like the ascent, the marathon tackles 13 miles and just under 8,000 feet of vertical gain to the summit. But its competitors must also face the jarring task of a return trip, all the way back down to the start in Manitou Springs. Marathon competitors come from a wide variety of backgrounds, all with even more diverse expectations and goals for the event. The marathon is not just elite competitors, but the field consists mostly of dedicated runners who want to test themselves against the ultimate running challenge. They are amazing people doing amazing things. The history of the marathon draws competitors from all over the globe, as well as interested locals who believe they have what it takes to finish this daunting race. Whoever they are, and whatever their story and background, all these athletes have one thing in common: a shared drive to overcome their own limitations and the physical extremes of the mountain. Again, competitors have the challenge of dealing with drastic changes in environment, temperature, and altitude, making the trip up extremely difficult. 2 hours after the start, a lone runner appears within view of the summit, the legendary Matt Carpenter, who is this year attempting to win the marathon for a record 11th time. Without anyone near him, Matt has already accumulated a sizable lead in this year's marathon. Moments later, nearing the turnaround, he shows no signs of slowing down. By the time he reaches the summit, Matt has a 6-minute lead on Darren Parker.
Way to go, man! All right! Good job, man! You get him? Yeah, you got it.
Matt quickly makes the turnaround and begins bounding back down towards thicker air and the finish line. At the halfway point, there is relief on the faces of the competitors. That feeling is generally short-lived as they come to grips with the reality of the return trip. Those runners who have yet to make the summit are continually reminded of the challenges ahead by the runners who have made the turnaround and are now running past them in the opposite direction. As the runners descend back down the mountain, the sudden drop in elevation puts them back in hotter temperatures, at times up to 30 degrees warmer than the summit, requiring yet more adaptations from the athletes. Back in the pine forest and approaching the finish, Matt Carpenter gives a quick look over his shoulder as he seems to feel the pressure from Darren behind him. The officials at the finish line are set up and waiting to receive the first arrivals returning from the summit. Finally, the first runner arrives. It's Matt Carpenter, who was able to retain some of the lead he established on the ascent to claim his 11th victory in the Pikes Peak Marathon. In all, 4 men were able to finish the race in less than 4 hours. Matt was able to hang on to his lead by a mere 1 minute over second-place finisher Darren Parker.
And how about that? We're going to have 4 runners in under 4 hours.
Carrie Nelson is the first female competitor, arriving with a time of 4 hours and 34 minutes, besting second-place Cecilia Mora by an astonishing 17 minutes. At the finish line, friends and family wait for all the competitors to finish their journey. For some, a journey that started up to 8 hours beforehand. After the race, the competitors have a chance to reflect on the magnitude of the challenge they have just conquered.
And it's just flat out gnarly hard, and it doesn't care who you are, it will beat you up, and that's why these people come here to test themselves against it. Every time I do this, no matter how many times I've done it, I still get scared, especially thinking about turning around, having to go through those rocks. One wrong step, you can bust your teeth out. So that makes you feel alive, and just, it's a neat thing to go for. And this was my 22nd running of either the Ascent or the Marathon or both. I've won the Marathon 11 times now, the Ascent 6 times, and the double twice.
My name is Tracy, and I'm at the Pikes Peak Marathon finish. I'm from here, Colorado Springs. I was going along just fine, past the bottomless pit sign, coming down towards bar camp on the way down, looked at my watch, said, oh, if I make camp in 10 minutes, I can be sub 6 when I get to the bottom. Next thing I know, I'm looking at a rock. So I tripped, obviously, on something. Hit my chin, bit my lip, have a loose tooth, split my lip, and then sort of sprayed blood the rest of the way. 2 guys behind me made sure I was okay. Got up, looked at me. If the bone ain't showing, keep on going. So since you can't see bones in your own face, I wasn't going to ask. I was just going to keep going.
2010 was a year to remember in the history of the Pikes Peak Ascent and the Pikes Peak Marathon, America's ultimate challenge.
Yeah.